45 minutes on TreVeyon Henderson as the greatest player in NFL history and some other things that we saw in week 10 if there's time. That's what we're talking about today on Stealing Bananas. I'm Ben Gretch. You can find the Stealing Signals newsletter at bengretch.substack.com. With me as always is Shawn Siegele. You can find all of his great work over at RotoViz. TreVeyon Henderson, maybe not quite the greatest running back of all time, but had been getting hammered basically everywhere around the fantasy industry. And then I think even more so by like fantasy consumers, people I see on social and stuff. Oh, all you fantasy analysts are on this guy. You're all idiots. You guys don't know anything. That's what it's every time when a rookie isn't doing well, you're so stupid. Like if it's a veteran who we've already seen score, but he's just like hit an age cliff, you don't get it as bad. But with the rookies, it's like, oh my God, what were you thinking that you could have possibly thought? And yet, like NFL teams can't even get the rookie picks correct. So it's not, there's no logic to it. We're all way too emotional about fantasy sports in general. But with TreVeyon, there's concern. It did seem like it may not ever really come around, or when it was going to come around, or whatever. I've been writing about it a lot in Stealing Signals. I've been almost weekly like, I don't think the way that he's being discussed is fair. So I feel a little vindicated. Shawn, your vindication goes back even further because you're the one who, more or less originally got me on him. This was a guy you really liked to the draft season. So you've been very on to TreVeyon. I got to give you.
Ben's like, we can, now that we've kind of built Henderson up and criticized people who are criticizing, we can go ahead and throw Shawn under the bus for liking him more than everybody else.
I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus. This is a victory lap. I was trying to give you the floor to victory lap more than me, I guess. But the in-season stuff with signals, I've been very adamant that this shoe is going to drop at some point. But no, it was a storyline of the week, right? The long TD runs. We were talking about it just briefly before. Not just for TreVeyon. We got the long one from Jonathan Taylor. We got 2 long ones from De'Von Achane, which was super fun. He's been running effectively all year, but has not quite found that space. Felt like it. I think he said 1 or 2 other ones, but it felt like a game like this was coming for him. Jahmyr Gibbs has a down game last week and then comes back this week. He has the early receiving touchdown. They obviously try to activate him as a receiver right away because he was, held into pass block all of last game. They threw a swing pass to him on like the second play. They throw to him as soon as they get down into the red zone on an angle route. He catches a touchdown. And then he has a rushing TD or on the edge. He fights through contact. And then late he hits the long touchdown for himself as well. And then you mentioned to me, I didn't really think about it, but Breece Hall has the short pass that he takes to the house. It was a weather week. We get some really bad weather in Chicago, several other weather games. That Breece play, I was just thinking of, and there was some weather in that Jets game. Running backs, we're in November football now. You get a little bit of rain out there. The running backs hitting the explosive plays, pretty meaningful in some of these games. The Breece Hall touchdown, that was basically all the Jets did offensively. They get two return touchdowns in the first quarter and get out to a big lead. The Browns pretty much had the better offense all day, but the Jets basically held those 2 touchdowns as their main scoring until that late long Hall touchdown. And then they're able to win because the Browns aren't going to score 30 on you. They're the Cleveland Browns, for crying out loud. So anyway, it was a fascinating week for these long running back touchdown runs, fun running backs. Taylor, Achane, TreVeyon, Gibbs, Breece, those are Stealing Bananas favorites. Those are fun profiles. It was a fun week.
It was. And just so many thoughts and emotions kind of running through your head when you work through a week like this. It was so much fun to start out the day watching Jonathan Taylor. I hadn't really been thinking about him too much from the perspective of MVP candidate, in part because he is a running back. And then we got, all the controversy. And this is one of the ones where I think people on all sides probably have a piece of it correct. One of the reasons that I was so confident that the Chiefs trading for Breece Hall, and just kind of to the side there, they've gotten pretty close to killing my joy of their product with this whole thing. And, I got all these stories about being there at Arrowhead as little kids. We've been around the stadium, Marty Schottenheimer dominating the regular season, choking the playoffs, obviously the Dick Vermeil era, and then the brilliance now of Patrick Mahomes. But Ben,
did you get a chance to talk about this on OT? Because I did get asked a couple of times to get your take on Breece Hall. I got to tell the listeners before I let you go too far on this, I was the one that got to break the news of the ridiculousness around the Chiefs not doing this, because you're not super plugged into social and everything, but we talked for, I guess it was waivers on Wednesday, and I don't think you had gotten completely all of the details of the trade deadline stuff leading into Tuesday, where the Jets were, reporting publicly they were going to take a third for Breece, but like no less than a third or whatever. But that was the asking price for Breece. And the Chiefs are publicly reporting on the other side through other reporters, they would go as high as a fourth, like conditional on a third, but no higher. And like, I was joking on Twitter that like these guys are doing a song and dance with each other. And I felt like it was clearly going to happen. I think everyone did. And then we did get confirmation after the deadline that yes, the Chiefs did have an offer out with the fourth. They would not go to the third. The Jets that would not accept just a fourth. It wasn't just these two competing reports, like talking through the media. Hey, it's their fault a deal didn't get done. That was actually confirmed that there was that discussion. And I told you all about this, and you were just like, this is the most absurd thing you've ever told me. Like the listeners wanted your honest reaction. And I wanted to throw it out there that you were flabbergasted. You were flabbergasted.
I mean, Ben, this is like one of those situations where you receive a trade offer in Dynasty and you look at it and you're trying to figure out like what part of it you're not getting, because if you accept it, you're pretty sure that the league will veto it because it's too much in your favor. And you go through that entire thought process, and then instead of accepting it, you go ahead and counter. I don't understand if the Chiefs don't understand the value of picks and salary as it relates to how you're working through roster building. I mean, this is a team that has money to throw away every year on Hollywood Brown, someone who should be benched if not cut. Or if they don't understand the value that Breece Hall would bring to their offense, the things that would open up. Obviously, all the big talking points last week, what the Chiefs are doing, how teams respond to it and don't respect the run, and then the broader picture of how teams are trying to attack. They're trying to get defenses to play a little bit more base and then be able to throw into that. Do the Chiefs not understand and value a running back within their offense, or do they have a misevaluation on Breece Hall himself? Now, in order to get to the point where they would say, no, we're drawing the line at a fourth, it almost seems like it has to be at least two of those three things the Chiefs have wrong.
Yeah, that sounds right. The scheme stuff you were noting, what's so crazy about this is coming off that loss to the Bills, where the Bills, Shawn Siegele did some awesome stuff for Sumer Sports, breaking down, or a video that was on social that I linked to in the newsletter, breaking down the Bills going to dime against the Chiefs in basically all packages, even when they were going to two tight end sets. So the big talking point last week was how a lot of offenses are going to two tight end sets to get defenses into base, meaning 4 defensive backs on the field. Then you can go to nickel, you get a 5th defensive back. Dime is 6 defensive backs. Those are lighter packages. It's easier to run on those packages, obviously. Teams are going to two tight end, getting defenses into base, meaning fewer DBs, meaning more front 7 players, typically more linebackers. And then instead of running, they are, because you get the two tight ends on the field, it's like a run formation. That's why you get them into base. They're intentionally throwing into base, as you just mentioned. The answer to that is don't go into base when teams go into two tight end and still try to let them run on you in nickel or whatever. The Bills were in dime, 6 defensive backs against the Chiefs, even when they were putting the two tight ends on the field, refusing to give them anything other than a pure pass defense, because their lead running back was Kareem Hunt. And so the whole part of this discussion goes down to whether or not you're misevaluating Breece Hall. It's what's the replacement level of the position, even if it's a non-premium position. you still have to understand relative value and replacement level and all of these things. Even if you believe it's a non-premium position, you can't believe that running back is so unimpactful that going from Kareem Hunt getting 85% of your snaps to Breece Hall being on your field and how that would change the whole dynamic schematically. If a team's going to run dime against you and you're in 2 tight ends and you have Breece Hall on the field, you're going to shred them because he can actually eat up the ground. You can run the ball, you can run screens, you can do all these things where he's going to have blockers in front of him. He just did it with the Jets against the Cleveland Browns defense that is not respecting the pass because Justin Fields basically didn't complete a pass in this whole game. And they just got him into a little short completion, behind the line of scrimmage, and Breece Hall runs for a 50-yard receiving TD because he does that. He gets downhill so quickly, so explosive in space.
So for anybody who thinks that's an exaggeration, right? Justin Fields completed 6 passes for 54 yards today. And the New York Jets won 27-20 because of their special teams, but also because of Breece Hall.
You said 54 yards, but how many of those were on the Breece Hall catch?
Well, right, 42 of them.
So he completed 12 yards of passes other than the screen to Breece Hall. What? Oh my God. I didn't know it was that bad when I was exaggerating. I was exaggerating when I said he didn't complete a pass, but apparently he legitimately did not. Did he not complete a pass beyond the line of scrimmage? I mean, he may not have.
Well, the other 5 passes would have gone for 12 yards. So it wasn't great, right?
No.
But you look at this situation, you can look at it from a variety of perspectives. And I think it's important to look at it from a variety of perspectives and important to bring in the nuance. One of the reasons that I think trading for Breece Hall would have been so perfect for the Kansas City Chiefs is that they are not going to fall into the trap that the Eagles have fallen into this year with Saquon Barkley, where they're trying to chase those big plays from last season to the extent that they are not unlocking Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, 2 of the best receivers in football, other than in emergency situations. That is not the way to play it. And so when people talk about either the running back talent is too clumped and doesn't matter, in part because you shouldn't be running it anyway, part of this deals with this idea that the passing plays are more valuable. Everyone knows that, right? But it's this mix of play calling and how are you going to use the running plays that you do have. You don't want to become the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's not what's going to happen with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. All right, Andy Reid throws the ball, and he throws the ball regardless of situation, and he throws the ball in part because either it's what he likes to do because he's been doing this long before it was popular, or he actually is the person who was, more than a decade ahead of the rest of the NFL and made all of these things work with Donovan McNabb, again, which is don't run too much. Similarly to the way Bill Belichick, way before it was fashionable, said, you know what we should do is just we don't want to let explosive plays score touchdowns. Make them run a lot of plays to score, right? The Chiefs with Breece Hall become the Indianapolis Colts. They don't become the Philadelphia Eagles, and so you don't run into that same problem. But you also have a situation when you have Breece Hall that you can force teams to play you at least a little bit differently. You get the explosive plays, but you could have a game like today. The Indianapolis Colts are the best team in the AFC. But you go over, you play a game in Berlin. Daniel Jones is coming off of a rough game, and he's facing an Atlanta Falcons team that, for all of their weaknesses, has a very, very good pass defense. And then you start to struggle a little bit in this game, and you have a tight game against a weak opponent that you should probably crush. But the key is to still win the game. In that situation, you can lean on a player like a Jonathan Taylor. Similarly to if you were the Chiefs and you found yourself in the situation, you could lean on a Breece Hall. Now, you're not going to ever be in quite that situation because Patrick Mahomes is not Daniel Jones, even the supposed MVP version of Daniel Jones. But this is a game where after a brief bout of success early to Alec Pierce, Daniel Jones was again having real problems, and the game was getting away from them. And then they go to Jonathan Taylor 32 times. He runs for 244 yards, puts the team on his shoulders, has the longest run of his career. And we're talking about a guy who breaks 40, 50, 60, 70-yard runs regularly, but has an 83-yard touchdown run where he runs into the defense. He is stopped. He comes back out. He runs around the edge and then beats the angle of the tackler. So many different things that he does there on a play that is not maybe still as flashy as most Jahmyr Gibbs plays, but the things that he did there are unbelievable in terms of what it means for the team. And that 83-yard touchdown is an explosive play, right? We're not looking at how does an individual running play compare to an individual passing play. The running back that you put out there for your NFL team has got to be able to break these plays. And
that's right.
Jonathan Taylor can do it. Breece Hall can do it. Devon Achane can do it. Jahmyr Gibbs can do it. And it just completely changes everything about how you can call plays, how you threaten the defense, and how you score, and then go ahead and win football games. The Miami Dolphins have basically no players on their team. And so you're not going to be like, oh, the Miami Dolphins are actually good, and that this win over the Bills shows that they're good and they're going to turn the corner. But what it does show you, and it comes as a stark contrast to the game last week, where the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes struggle against this terrible Bills defense, whereas Miami's just like, they're not good, right? We can beat them in multiple ways. We can beat them with Jaylen Waddle, again, an explosive player, and we can beat them with Achane and seal the game with Achane to keep Josh Allen from coming back against us. But the thing with the Jonathan Taylor 83-yard touchdown is even if you take that off, I mean, he goes for 286 yards in this game. And it's simply, it undermines your argument, and it's not fair to him if the response to that is that the running back position should be looked at as an unimportant position. Yes, it's not as important as a lot of other things, but it simply doesn't work to make the case that these guys are not a crucial part of building the type of team that you want to go win Super Bowls. You think about last year and what Barkley did when he's breaking all of those runs. You think about the Lions, but one of the things about the Lions is it's not just one thing or another with them, right? You have the huge yardage totals that they have. You have the big scoring totals that they have. One of the things that we talked about at length is how last year when David Montgomery was out, that their points per drive exploded, right? Points per drive is what you're trying to accomplish. And again, it doesn't make the case, and it's not successful in making the case if you're like, well, running backs are replaceable or running backs are equivalent, because you take David Montgomery, who himself is actually an above average running back, you take him out so they can't have that element. Now, part of it is that you can't have too many running plays, right? Too. So I don't want to ignore that part of it. Is that you take out the running plays. It's not just because now you have a little more Jahmyr Gibbs. You also don't have those bad running plays. So again, the people who are saying pass more, those people are 100% correct, right? But pass more and put an explosive back out there. That's what you want for your NFL team.
Right.
And then also as it works back from a fantasy perspective, that's what we wrote about during the summer, the spring, the fall, having that exposure to backs with big playability and with receiving ability. You don't know when you're going to get it. And that was, again, the thing with Barkley, is that it's easy to go back and say, oh, everybody was wrong in 2024. Barkley was the guy. The right lesson to take from that was you have to have exposure to big play backs. I mean, it's just bounced back the other way this year where Barkley hasn't really been the guy. But big play backs and big plays are absolutely crucial to what you want from a fantasy perspective and or the receiving. I mean, obviously, Christian McCaffrey scoring a ton of points.
But
that avenue, you've got to have one of those things.
The receiving's been down. I always talk about the high-value touches. That was something that, I've been talking about in the newsletter for the last couple of years. The high-value touches have been down. We get the Barkley season last year. We talked a lot about it, Shawn, last year into the early offseason. And you wrote about this offseason, how important in this sort of modern changing. We always talk about the sport as evolving and understanding the macro stuff so you can win at fantasy football and how important that is. And you talked about how this efficiency side of the running backs is something you've always been interested in and pay attention to. And you've always been into the explosive backs because when you get the explosive runs, go look at the scoring leaders from today. You were just telling me some of the numbers as we got on. I didn't realize Taylor had nearly 50 and both Achane and Gibbs basically had 40 and, Henderson was pushing 30. You get a ton of yards and a touchdown on top of it. You get like 15 points on one play sometimes. I mean, that's if it's a 90-yard run, but you get double-digit points on the one play, right? It's obviously a pretty huge impact on the bottom line. And that's sort of the thing you've been talking about for a long time, but you wrote about particularly as we're moving into, this era. There's been the receiving has been down for backs overall, but you do, as you noted, I mean, you want in the modern NFL, you want a running back that you can get in the passing game and get in space. Look at the Lions. Look at the Lions against the Vikings last week. Everyone acknowledged that the reason that the Vikings beat the Lions is they were able to keep Jahmyr Gibbs in pass blocking and keep him from touching the ball. It's not just that Jared Goff and his receivers, like the reason the passing game is so efficient there is that in a lot of the concepts, they get the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs and then he makes an efficient play. If you don't have that outlet, it changes everything. If you don't have the gravity that these running backs bring to defenses and bring guys down in the box, it changes everything on the vertical passing game. That people have mocked the concept of running to set up the pass to oblivion. As soon as defenses shifted to caring about taking away the explosive pass and getting lighter and getting more defensive backs on the field as a primary objective, it made it so that the elite running backs mattered more than ever, or mattered again, or however you want to say that, because there's now more space for their particular talent to change games. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, Achane, TreVeyon, Gibbs, Breece, all of these guys won. Their teams won today. And I mean, a lot of that was late, and you can say, well, they were running the ball because, they were leading. Some of these guys hit the long touchdowns late. TreVeyon to me is a fascinating one because he's not in this group as far as tier of talent and where he's at right now. Soon as he hits that long run, they start calling. Josh McDaniels starts calling an offense that's basically, we got to get TreVeyon the ball on first down and on second down, and I don't care if it's 3rd and 8. He didn't do that on every series after that, but there were multiple series. There was a clear understanding. We're just going to get as many touches to this player as we can, because as soon as he hits another one, that's how you change the game. And then he did that. And then he has the presence of mind on the second one to look back at the sideline and be like, am I supposed to be going down or going in? That was the coolest play of the entire day.
I do think my head would have exploded if he had gone down. Then, too, the thing with this here, and I think you have to give the team some grace as well and say players develop throughout the course of the season, and not all rookies execute right off the bat. And the Patriots have been winning, so it's certainly hard to criticize a team that's been winning. But this was the 2nd straight week that Drake Maye struggled, which is not what he's been doing throughout the course of the season. He would be number 2 in my MVP vote, 1 spot ahead of Jonathan Taylor, the player that we just discussed.
Wait, 1 spot ahead of or behind?
Ahead.
Taylor would be your number 1?
Taylor's number 3.
3. Oh, so who's number 1?
We'll get to him as we go through here. But a struggle, right? And if TreVeyon doesn't break the big plays today, the Patriots lose. And to think that they spent most of the season with Ramondre Stevenson, who A, isn't good, and B, is a huge problem even if he were decent, because he's a fumbling machine. Now, I have a real problem with benching backs who fumble and thinking the fumbles are going to continue to happen. Most of the time, they're one-off types of plays. At the same time, turnovers are incredibly important. You've got to hold on to the ball. And Ramondre Stevenson fumbles all the time in all situations.
There's an exception to every rule, even if you're saying it's not a thing. Ramondre Stevenson is the exception to that.
So I'm happy for Henderson, and I'm happy for the Patriots that we have this going now, but it is weird and it is unfortunate. And again, we don't see the stuff that's going on inside practice and inside the building, but it probably shouldn't require an injury to get the guy that you drafted where you drafted him, because he can give you that Gibbs-like impact. It shouldn't take an injury to a bad player to free him up.
Now, part of that is probably that the stuff about, okay, he wasn't running to the right gaps. He's running into his own linemen, some of that stuff. And like you said, I'm with you. I think this is part of the reason I've been writing that I think this is going to happen is I do think there's an element here where Mike Vrabel's just like very weirdly anti-rookie. Like they need time to develop, even if it's this type of situation where
we got the big play from Kyle Williams today too.
Yeah, they did. I don't even necessarily think that Henderson has massively developed. I mean, obviously the game has slowed down for him a little bit. He couple weeks ago when he got all those toss plays and had the like 70 rushing yards, you could really see where he was finding ways to get in behind his blocks that he kind of hadn't done so far. At the same time, when people were showing, like a few weeks ago, and I wrote about this in the newsletter, and it kind of frustrated me, but people were showing the like aggregate data, and oh my God, he's really struggling with all the advanced metrics and all this stuff. And I remember going and looking, and he had like 31 carries on the year through like 7 or 8 weeks. It's like you're showing that he has like horrible yards after contact and horrible yards per carry and all these things, and you're putting it on a graph, and you're not showing how much volume each player has. And I'm thinking in my head, if he has 130-yard carry, because he only has 30 rushes, he's going to jump a full yard per carry at that point. And this is an explosive player. So if you do this every week and you share that TreVeyon Henderson's really struggling and can't run efficiently and all that stuff, I mean, just from an analyst perspective and from what I'm looking at, like, man, you're really putting yourself in a tough spot where you're going to eventually just look wrong, because he's going to have a game like this. And now the averages are, you go make that chart now. He had such a small sample that he's not only made up for the tough beginning, that like he's probably near the top of the chart. I don't know. I can't even think of who would have made these charts, but I'm just sort of emphasizing that people were hammering small sample rushing efficiency for an explosive player. And what you're getting at is sort of the point that I was trying to make, where he's different than Gibbs and all these other guys, is what the Patriots, I think, acknowledged once he hit the big play is like, if you just get him into a seam, he's going to be gone. And that's what it felt like last week. And what I tried to emphasize when we talked on the show last week, where he had the pitch late, where he had an 8-yard loss. But if you pull that pitch off, he still had a good yards per carry, even though his long run last week was only 8 yards. I did that whole bit last week sitting here on our show. And I was saying, I mean, every carry was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards. There was nothing over 8 yards, but it was hitting the holes hard, and they were actually letting him run up the middle. And what I wrote in input volatility is if he can just find some space, he's going to house one. And that first run was up the middle, and he gets through the little tunnel, and he's out the gate the other side. And that's the point, is that there are not a lot of players that have that. TreVeyon Henderson's ability to then separate, destroy angles, and score just because they got a little bit of a crease. Ramondre Stevenson does not have that. Even his teammate in college, Quinshon Judkins, who has been running effectively, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have TreVeyon Henderson's, and that's why the Henderson hype was what it was. And people want to question that when that type of player is not doing that stuff. When we push this guy up in fantasy, when we're drafting him high, I talked about this offseason. I wrote a piece about the ways that people think about draft position, and they like to look at fantasy points versus ADP, projected fantasy points versus ADP in August. And then whether or not the guy was worth the pick at the end of the year, they look at full season fantasy points versus ADP. He was RB20 in ADP. He scored RB18 points, so he was a win. And that's not how the game is played. That's not how you actually win fantasy football leagues. And that's not how value in fantasy should be dictated. Value is dictated by these elite ceiling weeks, the ability to actually generate the stuff that can, because you can bench players too, right? When they have down weeks and those things. The point about Henderson being where he was at, and it has been tricky to all the rosters that we have him in, Shawn, where we've been playing him and he's not been scoring, but we were drafting him in that range. I'm not trying to argue that he was a good pick now because of one game, but the process question, we were drafting him in that range for this type of ceiling, this profile, this type of game. And yes, other players can score 30 points in those things. Again, Henderson is hitting a lower than 50% outcome on what I would have expected from him in his range of outcomes, probably by a lot, even with this game. But the point is, there are rare profiles and rare talents that can hit these types of ceilings. And it's a weekly ceiling. It's not a seasonal ceiling, because in managed leagues, you do go through periods and you navigate seasons. I go back to that, and the opportunity cost question is something that I've gotten a lot from, were we too overzealous pushing him up in home leagues into the 4th round and in the high stakes stuff?
He wasn't necessarily that expensive in home leagues. I said when we did the projecting 2021, 2020, projecting 2026 first and second rounds, that I thought not drafting James Cook in the 3rd round was a mistake. Right. It was just a flat mistake. It wasn't something where it gotten unlucky and he was doing better and some guys were doing worse. But I want to emphasize along with that that part of the reason that we drafted TreVeyon Henderson was a belief in Vrabel and a belief in Josh McDaniels and giving them more credit than they deserved on this topic. Obviously, overall, they've been fantastic, right? You can't criticize what they've accomplished for their team, which is the main thing. So that's kind of where they're looking as a team. But this is a situation where, I mean, Henderson should have played earlier. And, to the point that you're making on some of these things, one of the things that I always think is kind of humorous is looking at the design gap numbers that SIS has and then some of the yards before contact and hit at line stuff. SIS had him charted for 79% design gap coming into week 10, which is actually way too high. That means you are not getting off of the play as it's called. But that's easy to understand how a young player who's been told to run the play the way we called it and to be an NFL player, don't bounce everything, don't use your instincts, run the play. I mean, that's what you get a little bit.
Yeah.
You got to let the guy actually play. The as you were kind of describing how people are criticizing him, it brought back this just absolutely absurd thing that I always remember from Todd Haley when he explained why Jamaal Charles, not in his first season, but in his second season, why he wasn't playing. Right now, to give people some context, if they've forgotten 2009, which almost certainly everybody has because it was a long time ago, Jamaal Charles goes for 1,400 yards from scrimmage. He averages 5.9 yards per carry. But these were his carries over the first 7 weeks. 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 4, 6. This is a guy who ended up averaging 5.9 yards per carry for the season. And the explanation from Todd Haley is that he wasn't hitting the right gap. Let the superstar play. Stop shooting yourself in the foot. I'm not saying that TreVeyon Henderson is going to be Jamaal Charles, but let the player play. And create the big plays and just be good. We don't need to overthink this from a coaching staff perspective.
You don't. I think that's a fair point. I would say that from sort of a fantasy analyst perspective, that is something that we could have done a better job predicting. For example, I think we could have, if you asked me if I would make the TreVeyon Henderson bet again, I would say yes. If you asked me if I would make it again next year in the same circumstances, knowing this outcome of like a similar type player, I might say I'd be more cautious because this is Mike Vrabel doing it again. He did the same thing to A.J. Brown. It's a very talented rookie that is, he's just like bringing along slowly out of principle. And I think that may actually just be a Vrabel trade. It might be something that we as analysts maybe should have been a little bit more skeptical of, I would say. But the point is, we can't
bringing the whole Denver Broncos offense along slowly.
Yeah, I think he's doing that intentionally too. I did see a stat, Shawn, that the Broncos were the first team to win 7 games in however many days, 39 days or something, since like I don't know how long it was, but they were the third team ever. Their schedule has been so condensed over the last month plus, and now they have like 1 game in the next 24 days because they have like a bye, and then they have like a Thursday game or something or whatever. And they had become the first team to win 7 games in that small of amount of time. And during that time, they also traveled to Europe and came back to the Mountain Time Zone the next week and won both those games where they looked flat because they were like, everyone looks flat traveling to Europe. So anyway, the Broncos may end up looking a little better just by resting a little bit.
I don't think there is any universe or any explanation that becomes an excuse for what we saw on Thursday night. But at the same time, as we were preparing for the week and trying to figure out how it was going to go, like these teams are not even going to have a game plan for Thursday night. It's just too close off of all the other things that have been happening. And
yeah, that was brutal. But the point I was trying to make about Henderson was, so we maybe could have known the thing about Vrabel, and yet we know that there's uncertainty with those types of things. And I guess that the point I was trying to drive home is knowing that there's uncertainty with some of the coaching things, knowing those things, what types of bets we want to make, why do we make the bets we make? It's not, look, we're only shooting for upside. Okay, like we're comfortable getting last, whatever. But there is an element in fantasy where you are one of 12 teams, or in these high stakes formats, you're one of even more teams. But even in home leagues, you're trying to find the league winners. There's like 5 to 10 elite players every year that define fantasy football. You're trying to find those guys. The same process that lands you on a guy like Jonathan Taylor. The same reason you're saying it was a mistake to not be on James Cook, because it is a very similar argument. Is the reason that you would be very gung-ho and excited about TreVeyon Henderson. And the only reason you'd be making an opportunity cost or like, oh, Henderson was too expensive or any of those things is because he wasn't scoring. That's the only reason. But rookies do hit. You wouldn't make that cost with rookies that were scoring. It just comes down to the outcome. It becomes an outcome-based thing instead of a process-based thing, and whether the profile was right. But the question, if you want to go back and understand about TreVeyon Henderson, this is a guy who had 1,200 rushing yards as a true freshman. He had a massive breakaway run rate. He had all of the athleticism in the world. They drafted him in the high second round. They talked him up all through camp. They loved the player. The process of being in on TreVeyon Henderson, and I went through this all in input volatility last week before he had this game. It's like, I would still be in on it again. Like the fact there were people that were downplaying his week last week, even though he had a 75% snap share, saying that they didn't trust him on between the tackles and all that. And I was like, the only way you can say that them giving him a 75% snap share is not trusting him is if you're like just anchoring to your perception of the first 7 or 8 weeks. This has been building. And you needed to have Henderson in lineups. I'm not saying if you had him on your bench and you missed out on this that you should feel terrible or something, but
well, probably because your team is really good if you were in a position to not have him in the lineup today.
Yeah, that probably is the case. But this has been building. I wrote about it at Signals last week. I wrote about it at the week even prior. Not trying to get too far over my skis. I've been wrong on him before. I mean, people would be right to say that you've been writing favorably about TreVeyon Henderson every single week. So you can't just take credit for it when it finally works 10 weeks later. And that would be fair. But these last couple of weeks, there really has been the movement and the momentum. And there's a reason to stay in on the certain profiles. Part of my intro last week was the types of profiles, right, that are Jonathan Taylor. You go all the way back to what he was as a prospect, what he was in college, and what he's been throughout his whole career. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, like the reason that you were still writing about him, even as we didn't expect all of this from the Seattle offense, you were writing about, you wrote a whole piece about him. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is probably the guy that you need, because look back at what he was from day one in college, right? Like, look at what we're talking about on a long view perspective of what this player is. The reasons you don't panic about Brock Bowers, and then he comes back and he drops 50, obviously had a quiet game on Thursday night. It's not, that's not as simple as those things, but that is such a massive part of it, is understanding what you're looking for, what the bets are. You want to identify upside. You're going to find it in profile hunting and understanding like who these players are and what types of profiles actually succeed in the modern NFL based on the ways that the defenses are playing and all these types of things. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to victory lap Henderson too much. I'm really trying to do there's been a lot of post-mortem on Henderson already done through 10 weeks, and it's been wrong. And I'm trying to correct that now that we have at least a little bit of balance. He had a good game. And I'm trying to say, like, I don't think that there's no lesson to learn. But the idea that like everyone was stupid for being in on Henderson was never the right. That was a recency bias, small sample, knee-jerk reaction. And if you want to learn something for 2026, try to think through it in a more well-rounded way now that we have more information is the point that I'm trying to make. I don't know if it's coming across that way.
Well, and the last little thing I would say is that you are looking for a mix of players and profiles, as you were just mentioning, and you want to understand what you're good at and what your comfort level is with certain things. Which parts are you going to be mad at yourself over? And so when I say you want to have a mix, the teams that I have that are struggling the worst, obviously, are the ones where like everyone is injured. But certainly the Henderson and Harvey teams together are not the best. Mm-hmm. The fact that the Henderson and Harvey ones together are not the best is certainly the result of both of them missing. But there's a bad luck element to that, because I do think that if I would go back and work through it again, the idea that they would both miss, or the likelihood of them both missing, and that's what we're working with, right? It's probabilities and what are the range of outcomes and how do you need to put teams together, is very low. But even in these situations where you're trying to create exposure to that, I mean, I've got a 9-0 team coming in today that has TreVeyon Henderson. It's likely to advance. It'd certainly be very distressing if it somehow did not advance from this point, right? And then it's going to have TreVeyon Henderson still. And so you have a player who now is ready to really score, that he's simply not going to be on a ton of other rosters. You and I, as I'm looking through it, have about 3 rosters that could still advance with Henderson. And so you don't necessarily always have to hit the player in the first half of the season if you've built the types of teams that could still potentially advance. You want those points at the end. And I'm never going to tell someone to draft somebody because he'll probably be bad, and then at the end he'll be good and you'll have gotten him in. That's not the way to, I mean, you want to try and get your teams in, right?
Yeah.
And it's never something where you're like, oh, don't worry about the fact that Brock Bowers missed so many games. We're still going to have some teams where he advances, and now those teams are going to be competing with fewer Brock Bowers teams. It's not the thing you're trying to accomplish that. You want the guy to just destroy the world like Taylor and JSN and those guys are doing.
And the guys,
so you're going to have the guys like that, with those guys. And then, I mean, that mix becomes very potent and exciting for the actual fantasy playoffs.
That's right. And the guys that struggle, and then people say, well, at least I got a low owned player through. I mean, you can hope that player hits a ceiling in the fantasy playoffs, but for the most part, you just prefer the guy that's scoring a lot of points in the regular season because they're more likely to score a lot of points in the playoffs as well. But that other point you made about the Henderson and Harvey teams, and structurally, when you take both, it's not about them both not missing, if that makes sense. I think people who did that in like home leagues and stuff, it's tough. And I think it feels like, well, I was so far away from this working because they both missed. The point is that it's very survivable if one of them hits, because the ways that they could hit can be so meaningful. And you do draft teams knowing you're going to have misses. Like, it's not the end of the world to have 1 or 2 misses in the high leverage rounds. A lot of teams do. Like, a lot of my best teams do. You don't go back and look at your drafts. Go back and look at the best team in your own fantasy league. Look at their first 6 or 7 rounds. I promise you'll find multiple players that you're like, yeah, that wasn't a very good pick. It didn't really work out for him. It's not about.
And there are old players who have missed who do not now have this path.
That's right. That's the other huge part of it. That's the other huge part of what I was trying to say about the 10-week thing as well. Of like, we went through 10 weeks of postmortems on a rookie who now has had a breakout game. And that's the whole thing where it's like, I'm trying to emphasize that, like, let's wait and see wasn't wrong, which is, it's like, it's such a cliche or whatever type of response. But like, when the rookie hits, then what, like, it feels like wheels up right now, right? Like, what do we expect from Henderson going forward? We don't expect him to just like not continue to get the ball. The response from Josh McDaniels was, let's just keep giving him the ball every time and hope that he scores another touchdown from somewhere on the field, wherever we are. And I mean, they're not going to go back to just giving him like 3 or 4 touches a game. Or if they do, that would be very shocking. Maybe I'll be surprised. I don't know. That's exactly the point that you just made about the veterans, as like, you're just holding on. Like, I've been making the case on the show, Shawn, that I think DeAndre Swift has looked a lot better than Kyle Monangai. And I think he did it again today. I thought he looked awesome again. So I don't think you've thought he's looked as good. I'm really curious your thoughts on him when we talk about that game. But I feel like DeAndre Swift is like more physical than he was a couple years ago in Philadelphia. He ran through a dude. I mean, he's using his speed and agility to get to space at times, but he ran through a dude and got some extra space early in this game. I feel like he continues to look like a better, like, he's been impressive to me relative to what my expectations were for this player coming in. He was hurt this week. He missed Friday practice for a combination of injury and a personal matter. And I was like, man, maybe he's just frustrated because Kyle Monangai had a great week last week. Maybe he's about to get, Wally pipped here, and we're going to see Monangai the rest of the way. Monangai didn't really do much of anything today. And every time Swift touched the ball, I was like, yeah, he's I feel like if a very casual fan watched the Bears for the first time today and you asked him who the more talented back was, it would be 99 out of 100 of them would say that number 4 guy is way better than that other guy.
Kyle Monangai got carried into the end zone by his teammates today, so I'm going to be the one guy out of 100.
You're going to be the one
guy vote on that one.
But my point there entirely is that the second that Swift doesn't look like that anymore, it's over. The second that Nick Chubb has started, and I don't even know that Chubb did anything bad. He just looks like Nick Chubb. But Woody Marks is just taking over that back. It's not like Woody Marks looks that amazing. You know what I mean? Like, it's the point you were making about the veteran is they fall off, and when they fall off, it doesn't come back for them, right? Like,
DJ Moore was running, throwing, passing. It was planes, trains, and automobiles for him last week. But he scored 0 points today.
I knew he wasn't involved, but 0 is shocking to me. Let's talk about that Giants. We've talked about Henderson plenty. Let's talk about that Giants-Bears game. I told you that's the game that I had the most notes for. But more not playing a lot. How did Burden wind up? Because Burden was in early, so he has a catch on the first drive. Then Zaccheaus drops a TD a couple moments later. Then Burden was in after that on a green zone play with Adunze and DJ Moore. And I thought that was an interesting sequence. But we still saw a lot of Zaccheaus later on an important late drive. Zaccheaus has another drop right off his hands. The broadcast calls it 3 or 4 drops for him. I must have missed the other 1 or 2 because I only had
4 targets. He had 1 catch. The other 3 all go off of his hands. At least one of them would have been a very difficult catch.
The other 2 were clear.
This was another kind of weird day where you got weather, and then so much of the season, the focus has been on Caleb Williams' accuracy and then the arm talent. And where do those 2 things kind of meet in the middle at some point? Today, 20 for 36, he does rally them to victory. I was joking with the folks I was watching the game with that he is the most physically talented QB in the NFL, and he really wants you to know with all of these passes. And so it's the arm talent combined with the agility, right? His evasion rate in college was super high. Throughout most of his NFL games, it's been super high, but he then refuses to run across the line of scrimmage. That's not great for you in fantasy. He did run across the line of scrimmage at the end of the game today. It won them the game. But it was also a great illustration today. Even when he throws accurately, he's not necessarily throwing that catchable a ball, in part because he's got so much arm strength. Zaccheaus needs to come down with at least 1 of those 3 balls that hit his hands, but I mean, he's making these catches very difficult by overthrowing a decent number of them. Some of them require that, but when you are rolling out and you're flying into the sideline as you throw it, and the receiver is also flying out of bounds and is on the full stretch, and the ball hits their hands in the backcourt of the end zone, and they don't make that play, that is not an expected play.
Okay, but there was a guy who made an unexpected play on a Caleb Williams throw today. Colson Loveland, 3rd and 10 on the penultimate drive. Caleb's rolling left, throws it back across his body. Loveland's moving left with him, and it's way behind him. I wrote this in my notes that it's the kind of play you'd see missed and you'd think you'd love to have that, which is what you just described. But you understand why the guy didn't make the play because it wasn't necessarily a great throw. Loveland went back and made the play. And so this is just adjacent
and then took a shot.
And then took a shot. And it was to convert a 3rd and 10 from deep in their own territory. They would have been on 4th and 10 there. They went down and scored on that drive. They were down 10. They go down and score again to win. They needed that play. I mean, that was a catalyst for their penultimate drive. They score on the final 2 drives. They're down 20-10. They come back. They win 24-20. He was quiet early, Loveland. Made several big plays in comeback mode in the second half. This guy's clearly a dynamic weapon. And then to finish the Burden and Zaccheaus point, after Zaccheaus' other drop that I described, which was on a key drive there late, Burden was in there for that final drive, and they have him run like a 20-yard stop. And you're always talking about how he's probably their most athletically gifted receiver on this team, or you have been since the offseason. I mean, he got both DBs. I think there was 2 DBs next to him, both of them to go an extra 2 steps and create that separation on the stop. And I mean, Caleb bulleted that ball to him too. He caught it easily, and he had time because he created so much separation to turn, try to throw a little juke. Didn't really get anywhere, but I mean, a big catch on to help that drive as well. I think it was 18, 20 yards, something like that on the final drive. I think we may have seen a little bit of the Burden overtaking Zaccheaus, which does to get back to what you were saying about TreVeyon, play your guys. Burden, when he's out there, looks dynamic, looks like those types of routes, those types of plays. Zaccheaus has looked good too this year, but he's Olamide Zaccheaus for a reason. He's been around the league for a reason. There's a reason whatever team he was on last year, the Commanders didn't care about bringing him back, and now he's on your team, the Bears. He was out there for cheap, and no one was making a bidding war to get him because he's Olamide Zaccheaus. You drafted Luther Burden very high, right? You wanted Luther Burden. I mean, he's got to play going forward. And Colson Loveland's got to play because he had a big game today.
We're moving in the direction of this being Loveland and Burden with Adunze playing off of them. the Loveland thing is obviously going to happen. The Burden thing also feels inevitable, but it's inevitable with that asterisk of until it fully happens, you're nervous because it's Luther Burden. And you know that there have been that there are some issues in the past. Certainly getting the concussion when he did slowed things down a little bit. You'd love to see these young guys get a chance to play every week because you don't know which week is going to be the one that something happens that is then the catalyst to unlocking them for big plays the rest of the way. But everything that the Bears did during the offseason and the way that they're building right now, you can tell that Odunze, Loveland, and Burden are going to be the big three for this team with Caleb Williams, having these interesting games. And this is a game, obviously, the Giants should have won. We talked about a couple weeks ago that the 33 points that Broncos score in the fourth quarter, the only team that could have happened to was a Brian Daboll coach team, or at least I made that claim. You claim that you like some things about Brian Daboll. I also do, because Brian Daboll is out there as the everyman, where when things don't go right, he's like, stoicism. He's like, I'm going to let everybody know. But then also when they're like, there's a penalty here, like you didn't want to go for it on 4th and 1. How about 4th and a foot? It's like you realize that everyone in the NFL now goes for it on 4th and a foot, right? He's like turning his back to his assistant coach. He's like, I'm not going to listen to this. It's like, we made a field goal up by 10. Don't try and convince me to go for it on 4th and a foot. Then they lost the game.
Brian Daboll is he's a comic book character at this point. Every time they show him on the sideline, especially on a cold game like this, you get the flurries going, and he's got like his beanie on, and the face is all red, and he's yelling, and he's like it's like you got this like the comic book steam, or the cartoon steam coming out of his ears and everything. It's there. You can see it without even seeing it. He's hilarious.
It was a huge bummer in this game that Jaxon Dart does get knocked out. He's been throwing his body around. The two players that just jumped out today as being the most exciting were Jaxon Dart and Trey McBride. Both of these guys just absolute forces of nature. Jaxon Dart has been really the best storyline in the NFL over the last month and a half. To lose a game because they have to go with Russell Wilson late. Another game where, the Giants look completely and totally overmatched. They have nobody. Now, I do want to note that his cast of non-characters, Darius Slayton makes a highlight reel catch. You get a highlight catch. I think it was from Theo Johnson in this one as well. Guys making one-handed catches as they're getting hit. So it's not like the guys he's playing with didn't also come to play a little bit today. But at one point early, the Giants looked like they were going to be overwhelmed. And then they went through a stretch, the vast middle of this game, more than half of it, where just because of Jaxon Dart, they were dominating the Chicago Bears. It was unfortunate that turned on him at the end of the game when he goes out.
He looked awesome. My favorite thing about his throw, I've complained so many times on this show and in Stealing Signals about the deep balls. I've done it with Russell Wilson before, about the deep balls where the receiver is moving sort of diagonally downfield and across the field, and the cornerback is always trailing in a way that they've got the angle upfield. So if the ball's caught, they can try to make a tackle. They're always behind the player. And I always complain when the quarterback leads that player upfield. It's kind of the way that you're thinking, like, oh, I'm throwing it further towards the end zone. When you lead them upfield, the cornerback gets back into the play, turns it into a contested catch. There will sometimes be like 2 to 3 yards of separation. The corner's in this trail position, but he's further upfield. And if you throw it, vertically above him, and he has to he has to, turn his route vertically, the cornerback ends up kind of coming over the top of him. It becomes a contested catch. And you've already won on the route. Jaxon Dart hit Slayton. Slayton had a great one-handed catch you mentioned. He hit him for a deep throw in this game as well, where Slayton was running kind of a flag toward the sideline. Dart understood where his miss was. In weather, in conditions, he underthrew it back toward the sideline. Slayton comes back to the ball. It's not perfectly in stride. It doesn't look like a picturesque, perfect throw. At the same time, because the DB's trailing more vertically up the field, he has no chance to stop and curl all the way back around and get to Slayton. So Slayton has all the time in the world to slow down, come back to that ball, secure the catch on what is a 30-plus yard throw in conditions, and it makes it an easy play. He catches it with time to then try to make a turn and run up the sideline a yard after the catch play. He takes the defender completely out of the play by knowing where his miss is and not trying to be overly precise in a situation where weather can lead to an incompletion. You can lead the guy out of bounds. We see guys miss open receivers all the time. So you know where your miss is, and then you get the big play, even if it's not, maybe the best version of it. It's not a touchdown or something, which probably wasn't there anyway because the play was leading out of bounds. Maybe he cost him like 3 yards. I mean, that's it. And so you secure the completion without trying to be too precise. It's just a smart football throw. It's understanding where your miss is. I complain about this with quarterbacks all the time. Russell Wilson used to do it. I remember a play with Jerry Jeudy in Denver where he did it. That was so bad. He threw it like 10 yards upfield where Jeudy was wide, and he had so much room to throw it laterally because the sideline wasn't even in play. And he brought the DB back in the play, who knocks it away. Dart understands that. He understands throwing away from the defender in that spot. He does a lot of really smart things like that. He does a lot of smart things when he's scrambling. Unfortunately, the play you mentioned, it was scary. He loses the ball. He's trying to grab it. It's a fumble. He's trying to grab it while he's going down. And then as he lands, he immediately stops fighting for the ball. And you're just like, oh, he's concussed. I have no idea how they let him stay on the field for multiple more plays. They took him out at the quarter break. But I was watching it and I was like, that's a concussion. I didn't even see where he hit his head until the replay. And then I was like, oh, it was on the turf. But because of the way he was fighting for the ball and then immediately stopped fighting when he hit the ground, you're like, he's been disoriented on this play. Poor job by the spotter, I will say, on that at least they did correct it, but he stayed out there for a couple extra plays. That we don't want to see that stuff because that's what happened with Tua a couple years ago. You get another hit right after that. That's where it gets really dangerous. But they pull him out. The Russell Wilson note I had, Sean, I always say I love Greg Wilson, and I do, and he's my favorite. He's absolutely my favorite. But there was a key down where Russell Wilson took a sack late, and they're showing what he saw as he rolled out. They're showing the end zone view. And as Olsen is saying, there's just nowhere really to go with the ball. There's this very clear route win with Darius Slayton where he's running a 10-yard out, and it's extremely straightforward that the ball needed to go right to that guy who's wide open. It's like they froze whoever was running the replay, froze it where Slayton had broken and had a 2 yards of separation. Maybe only 3 people listening to this know what I'm talking about, but the 3 people who saw this are laughing right now because it was I think Greg Olsen was thinking about whether he should correct himself, and he was like, I'm just going to move on. But he's like, there's nowhere to go with the ball. And they just stopped it. They're like, what about this guy that's wide open right here? And they just made it very obvious. Instead, Russell Wilson did not throw the ball. Just held on to it until he got sacked because that's what Russell Wilson does. And ended up being a pretty bad, like you said, switch, obviously, in quarterback. You got one quarterback who's carrying the team on his back, and then you get another quarterback who comes in and is Russell Wilson. And so you go from where they had come all the way back and taken that 20-10 lead, and then they lose. And it really just comes down to the way that you put it. The dart goes off the field, and then the game just completely changes. Now the Bears are getting the drives. They're getting the ball right back because Russell Wilson can't even sustain a drive. They're able to go down and get the points they need. They win the game. It's a bummer for the Giants. For my guy, Brian Daboll. They're 2-8 now. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about much more Brian Daboll, Sean. It's the end is coming. They've already had the report out there that they may fire, I think it was one of the head coach or the GM, but they don't necessarily need to fire both, which was, they're already letting it know that Daboll's going to be gone. They're going to keep Joe Schoen, I think, is the what's being anticipated right now. So we're 10 weeks in. And it's already known. Maybe they'll just do it soon.
Well, certainly some of the recent draft picks. Look at Malik Neighbors. You look at Jaxon Dart. You have to be excited about those. Then the young QBs, they did some stuff in this game in the weather that just bodes very, very brightly for the future. Caleb Williams, 36 passing attempts, 8 carries, 0 sacks. Jaxon Dart, 29 passing attempts, 6 carries, only the 2 sacks. You think about that performance, 2 guys in bad weather. They're not there yet. But those teams are going to be very, if not very good, at least very exciting over the next handful of years.
Russell Wilson also had 2 sacks, but just 7 pass attempts and 2 rushes. Didn't play quite as much of the game, but matched Jaxon Dart in that all-important sack stat. Managed to lose more yards as well. What did you think about? I mean, we should move on from this game. But what did you think about Tracy and Singletary? They used a lot of Tracy. It seemed like early they were really trying to make a point that he was the lead. I thought he looked good running the ball as well. Singletary made a great play on a 3rd down where he gets contacted behind the line of scrimmage on a swing pass and breaks the tackle and then gets up the sideline for a 41-yard gain. Ends up with 53 receiving yards. So if you did play Singletary, you get some production out of him, but only 20 rushing yards on 8 carries. He was playing in the green zone again, though. Tracy got 14 carries, 71 yards, did look decent as that sort of between the 20s runner. Do you still feel like I guess I still feel like they think of Singletary as sort of the answer to some of the Cam Scadaboo stuff, the more valuable, like high-value touches. Does that seem like what you're thinking too?
Yeah, you look at this game here, and it's not like the backs were that involved, but one of the things, off of that background as a receiver in college, you'd love to see Tracy be very clearly the pass-catching back, which is what he was doing during that stretch last season, where he was such a valuable fantasy factor, even when the Giants' offense was not particularly successful. In this game, you get the 41-yard reception from Singletary. You also get him stopped at the 1-inch line. That drive where they decided not to go for it on the 4th and goal from the half-yard line, that was a Singletary carrying him to that point drive. Now, I think it's also very positive for Tracy that he looked good as a runner in this game. I think we're going to have a split backfield in a situation that probably doesn't have enough overall value to split it. But certainly when you think of, we're mostly through the buys now. One of the teams that does still have a bye late is actually the Giants themselves. So they certainly won't help you on that bye week. Running back can be a difficult position to fill. I'm certainly looking at all these Bucky Irving teams, wondering if he ever plays. The kind of interesting, fun thing there was we finally got some Sean Tucker. So, maybe you can go that direction in the future. I thought both of the backs looked reasonably good in this game. I don't think that they're very fantasy viable.
Yeah. One other note I had in this game, Bears went for it on 4th and 3, down 10, about 9 minutes left at their own 43. A lot of coaches at your own 43, you got 9 minutes, you're only down 10. They punt there. They did not get it. Gave New York great field position. They still won the game because turning over good field position isn't everything. That's the point that I want to drive home there is people, when the teams go for it, they're like, well, what have you given up? You've given up great field position. Oh my God. Yeah, one of the things that gets misunderstood here is when you punt, you're giving up your possession, you're pinning them deep or whatever. A lot of times that just leads them to get some of those yards back and burn some extra clock, what have you. They gave up the ball at the 43. They got the ball back. They went down and scored. They scored again. They won the game. I liked that aggressive decision. And I just, the outcome I thought was interesting because teams, this whole idea of delaying the loss. Again, it's one of the things that gets misunderstood in my mind. They went for it to not delay the loss, didn't get it, gave up the great field position that could have put them in even a bigger hole, and yet still won that game. I heard some discussion in one of the games about there was another big comeback today. There's been several of those. And I couldn't help but think it's because these coaches are making these aggressive decisions that we talk about as not delaying the loss. And we think about the negative side of it where when it doesn't work, they end up getting blown out. And we've talked about that on the show a little bit, Shawn. When it does work, you can come back and win because you're maximizing what little time you have left by actually going out there and trying to hit the parlay that you need, hit all the important, plays and, the right type of parlay, not the parlay that's like, oh, I'm going to punt it. And then I'm going to definitely get a 3 and out. And then I'm going to definitely score. Then I'm definitely get another 3 and out. And then I'm going to definitely score. That's the wrong parlay to be betting on.
Sure. And you create more moments that could work in your favor.
That's right.
You can't afford to forego any moments that might work, and it provides more information. It's one of the reasons why going for 2 earlier as opposed to later is helpful. You get more information, and you then have more tactical flexibility as well. In this situation, the information that you get when you don't get it is you're going to have to do something like force 2 3-and-outs and score 2 touchdowns. But that's exactly what the Bears did. Force 3-and-out, touchdown, force 3-and-out, touchdown. Then you win the game.
Yeah. So I guess what I should have said is if they convert the 4th and 3, they don't have to hit the parlay. Whether you punt or don't get the 4th and 3, you got to hit it either way. It's the only amount of time you have left is to get the 3 and out, get the punt, all those things. Shawn, you talked about Caleb sometimes throwing the ball so hard that it is a little bit uncatchable. The player that made me think of today, JJ McCarthy, he just lacks touch on some of the simple throws. He was okay again. Vikings fans love this guy. They make a huge deal about his competitiveness and all this stuff. I mean, for me right now, it's a little bit much ado about a guy who's probably not actually that great. Some of his better completions were just like checkdowns in this game, but he also misses some of the checkdowns. But he throws. There's a throw to Jefferson right at the goal line. It could have been a 25-yard TD. It goes off his hands. Moose Johnson on the replay says Jefferson has to make that play. And yet it's just one of those that's like it's a little bit off, too far off frame, and it's thrown with a lot of velocity, a little bit too far out in front. Justin Jefferson is going to tell you he thinks he should have caught it, but there's just something about McCarthy where like everything is a bullet and it's never on frame, It's always a little bit off. That makes it a little trickier, right? That's the kind of the point you're making with Caleb.
I'm glad that the Vikings fans love him. You can see the competitiveness. You can also see the athleticism, right? He keeps a play alive late in this one where obviously should be sacked. But when you're saying the Vikings fans love him, like, does that include Justin Jefferson? Because Jefferson got 12 targets today and 4 catches, and the 8 balls that weren't caught had much greater chance of getting him injured than resulting in positive completions. This was like a weirdly sort of like meme-worthy type of game where like the fans love him and Jaylen Naylor, who somehow goes 5 for 124 and a touchdown. And look, Jefferson awesome. And Jordan Addison would be like, I mean, so the 12 targets for Justin Jefferson and only 4 catches, 11 targets for Jordan Addison and only 3 catches, and again, multiple chances to get injured. Then, I mean, if you told me,
but if Addison did
today that our guys would get 23 targets, I'd be like, oh, the Vikings won, and this was a fun day. No, it was just all kinds of scud missiles, like where the receivers like, where's the ball? And like, I'm gonna get hurt out here.
I'm going to give Jaylen Naylor some props because if Addison would have done what Jaylen Naylor did, I might have led the whole show with him instead of TreVeyon Henderson because Naylor actually did some awesome stuff in this game. He had the long reception early with some great yards after the catch. He had a touchdown where he, I believe, toe tapped and did a good job. And I think he had one where he juggled the ball a little bit on one of those scud missiles where it was kind of a tough play and he kind of juggled it to himself. He made some. I don't know what the deal was with Jaylen Naylor randomly having like an amazing game. Oh, is Jaylen Naylor that good? People always like to ask those questions. I mean, the rest of his career would suggest probably that's not the answer. But
he's not a bad third receiving option.
No, exactly.
I mean, certainly, you don't want targets to Adam Thielen being involved in the game plan.
That's right. And the way that I'm looking at this is, it feels like the defensive game plan gave Naylor some more favorable matchups. Probably that. I don't know the cornerback situation for Baltimore or any of that stuff or who was guarding him on some of those plays, but he certainly had single coverage in some of those spots. And it just seemed like the defense was in some cases dictating that that's where the ball should go. And Naylor was stepping up and making those plays, which is probably good for Jefferson and Addison. Some of the Jefferson and Addison targets you're talking about that went uncaught, you had multiple defenders in the area. And that's why you're talking about, you're talking about injury because you're talking about an off target throw with multiple defenders around. No receiver wants to have to deal with that. I mean, that's tough.
I mean, they're up in the air trying to deal with an off-target pass as 2 guys launch out of. It's not great.
No, not great. On the other side, Lamar, I feel like is just not really in a rhythm since coming back. Seems like he's like not fully healthy, although he seemed to be moving a little bit better after 10 days off from the Thursday before. Keaton Mitchell got into space, looked awesome again. There's a very fun stash, obviously. You have made sure that we keep him affixed to all of our benches.
Sounds like we've burned a spot on every team by holding Keaton Mitchell.
I love
Like,
Keaton Mitchell, but there's been times
yards per attempt today, still utterly worthless.
There's been times where I've wanted to use that roster spot on a couple of the teams, and you're like, no, this team will go 2-8 with Keaton Mitchell on the bench, and that's the way it's gonna go.
He did look good. The Ravens offense was awful. The Minnesota Vikings, you look at Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and you look at this defense coordinated by Brian Flores, who certainly, I mean, he's had some difficult things, some controversial things in his past. I mean, I feel like it's just unfortunate they're 4-5 because he is award worthy at this point in terms of what he is doing defensively. They humiliated the Detroit Lions last week. Lamar Jackson looked very much like just a guy. Derrick Henry couldn't average 4 yards per carry. Mark Andrews had his obligatory touchdown, like the only time he is involved in the game. They completely shut down what should be much more like the offense that we saw in week 1 against the Buffalo Bills. And yet, I mean, J.J. McCarthy was so bad that this felt like, clear-cut Ravens victory pretty early on. It's funny to think of like who is in the worst shape currently between the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. And it's definitely the Bills or the Chiefs.
Ravens have won 3 straight. Have some more winnable games upcoming. That is funny to think about. The Bills. Yeah, what happened there? I mean, just turnovers all game. They're struggling to finish drives. They turnover on downs, throwing downfield on a 4th and short early. Then James Cook loses a fumble. You go much later in the game. Allen loses a fumble with 7 minutes left, down 10. They need to get 2 touchdowns. He had an interception in the end zone in the 3rd quarter. Missed extra point, missed field goal as well. Oh, no, sorry. I'm saying that wrong. I have a note for Miami, how they got up 16-0, that they had a missed extra point and a made field goal to get to 16-0. Anyway, the Bills had several turnovers in this game.
Yeah, so the turnovers caused some issues. They have the turnover on downs as well. But it is important to also note that they gave up 7 yards per play to the Miami Dolphins. So it's not just the turnovers. Their own offense was effective on a per-play basis. It wasn't effective as the Dolphins. You can say, well, that's in part because of Achane, but going back to our points at the top of the show, like those explosive plays count, and they are crucially important. I mean, this is a road game for the Bills. They're coming off of the big win against the Chiefs. I guess I don't buy that within the context of a 17-game season where you only play once a week and every game is so crucially important that you're really going to have letdowns at the NFL level. If you do, you need to not, because you can't afford to have any of those types of things. This is a good reminder that in most cases, the NFL teams are really pretty close in talent, even the teams like the Dolphins that on the lines are very weak. Now, they didn't look so much like that today, and the commentators noted that the offensive and defensive lines had come to play in a way that we haven't seen for most of the season. We had the Falcons game was another illustration of the fact that, I mean, the Colts have been very, very good. That game ends up being pretty close. I think the other point here for me would be some of the same criticisms of the Bills that I make of the Chiefs, which is that when we just saw the Chiefs pass again on adding to their offense, they're relying on Patrick Mahomes. They're saying we've got Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy back. And we've noted that that was meaningful, right? And we're optimistic. And yet you look at what happened against the Bills and you're like, well, if Rice and Worthy are going to be mostly manufactured touch guys in the way that you're currently running the offense, I mean, that's a problem. You still don't have enough talent around him. Then Josh Allen is being asked to do a lot. Now, this is a game where they lose. They're not really that competitive. And then you look at the end of it, you're like, he's 28 for 40 for 306 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's not like he played poorly. But an offense where he is surrounded by Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid. I mean, some of those guys are doing some decent things. This was a game where Keon Coleman actually does score a touchdown. We know that Shakir, as he's gotten healthier, has been a little bit more dynamic. We know that Kincaid has had a bit of a breakout season this year, certainly from a per route basis. I believe he got dinged up in this game, and that truncated his performance in this one today. The Bills do have that running back in James Cook around him. I guess, certainly if you're a Bills fan, you think you should have more talent offense, and you should have a functional defense around a player that the NFL has basically not seen, may not see again, but is yet again this season now not pointed toward winning a Super Bowl.
This is the point in the program where I get to tell you another, I believe, confirmed, not just rumor, but like something that came out today was that the player on the other side of this game who led the game in receiving yardage, Jaylen Waddle, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 84 yards, 1 touchdown, made a fantastic play, strong play on the ball for a deep touchdown. Good, really well thrown ball, but he's got a contest on that and doesn't always play strong like that. I mean, Jaylen Waddle's playing like a legit number 1 wide receiver right now. We know this guy's incredibly good. He's been inconsistent and hurt at all times.
As soon as Tyreek Hill went down, Jaylen Waddle's like, you know what? I should play like the number 1 wide receiver. And the Dolphins like, we could have been in the Super Bowl mix if you had done this while we also had a superstar.
Why did they? Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm going to play really hard now. And it's like, oh, hey, you're really good at football. The Bills apparently offered a 2027 first-round pick for Jaylen Waddle. The Dolphins would only accept a 2026 first-round pick. Is the report that that I saw that they would have. Well, now I'm trying to look it up, and now I'm seeing something else that is saying it's just because it was an in-division trade, but maybe the Dolphins were never going to trade Jaylen Waddle to the Bills. I don't know, but I thought I saw that if it would have been a 2026 pick that Miami wanted a first-round pick in 2026, not 2027 as part of the package, is the report that anyway, everything you were just saying, people who are following this, they may even know better than I am and trying to describe it, will probably be aware that there was a report, I believe it came out Sunday morning, that the Bills very nearly had a Jaylen Waddle just like days ago to address. So same thing that the Chiefs declined to do with Breece Hall. For whatever reason, these teams don't actually feel like adding skill position talent matters.
Then the Waddle trade would be, I think, a lot trickier than a Breece Hall trade because you're talking about a first-round pick. You're talking about a guy who has had inconsistent production, and you're a little bit worried about the fragility of the body there. It's interesting because he's signed for the next 3 years. So part of it is the value of that contract relative to you've got to include the pick and the contract. One of the things when you're talking about teams like the Bills and the Chiefs, and at this point of the season, you want to be aware of keeping your window open, what that means for you. You also want to be aware of the fact that the pick you're trading is a late first-round pick, or in the Chiefs' case, hopefully a late third-round pick, and it's a little bit different than trading a pick at the top of those rounds. Where would you be with that Waddle situation when you're looking at the contract and the pick value, knowing how the wide receiver contracts, though, were accelerating, and so you could argue that mix of contract and pick. Then one of the things, obviously, that the Chiefs are dealing with is that Breece Hall's an expiring contract. I think that part is, again, we talked at the top about how the Chiefs are not factoring the things in properly. The Dolphins have a different type of calculus because the contract there, in addition to the pick, you got to work through those things.
Yeah, I think that would be a tricky trade. I don't know. You have limited resources. You got to use them effectively. A first and a third is a lot in addition to the salary. They used it first on Keon Coleman. They're not getting first-round receiver production out of him necessarily. He did hit for a splash play. In this game, you mentioned that Allen's numbers were still strong in this game. In my head, I'm thinking he did have the turnovers, a couple tough ones, and he made some big plays down the field, but a lot of his completions these days are the short catch and run plays that are sort of like extended handoffs. So when you see the good completion percentage and a lot of passing yards, some of that's a little bit manufactured for him, with like Khalil Shakir having 7 catches for 58 yards, a couple other short completions for sure. Like James Cook has 5 catches, Ty Johnson has 2 more, Ray Davis has 1, so 8 go to the backs. Vast majority of those are short. Some of these tight end completions, Dawson Knox is always catching some short passes. Kincaid's been catching vertical ones. There's definitely more than I'm letting on as far as what was down the field in this game, but they do some like jet motion stuff too. That are like tip passes or basically handoffs, and then he gets the passing yardage for it. Not like knocking Allen on this, but his passing numbers are sometimes like vaguely inflated. But yeah, I don't know that Waddle is the right
Just
way.
looking at the longs in this game, it's interesting because he had at least 8 15-yard plus completions.
Yeah. Were they all like 15 air yards? Is that what you're saying?
No, just
yardage, regular receiving yards. I didn't know if you were looking at like the next gen stats or something, like his now it's making me want to pull that up. His little passing chart. Those things are so fun. But yeah, let's talk about we got a couple more games. We were going to talk the Seahawks and Cardinals for sure. I want to talk about the Browns a little bit too, though, because I do want to get your thoughts on Jeudy. We talked about Jeudy before the games. Tough one on a lot of start sets. And so you and I had that conversation. I guess we already talked about Justin Fields and the Jets in this game. And when I say Justin Fields, I mean the fact that nobody on the Jets caught more than 1 pass. There were 6 completions to 6 different players. They all had 1 reception. It's just an absurd box score. It's absolutely absurd. Garrett Wilson led the team with 3 targets, no catches. Jerry Jeudy, 12 targets, 6 catches. He has an eventful game in my eyes. He had a bunch of volume early, 5 first quarter targets, 3 catches. He had an intermediate throw go off his fingers early. He did make a very nice play for the touchdown. Had another tough catch on a vertical pass. There was a play I have in my notes that the thing I was watching like cut the play, but it was third and 17. He didn't get the play, but they seemed to be talking about him after the play. I didn't get to see that one. Anyway, only catches 6 of 12. A couple of them were poor throws. You got Dylan Gabriel, quarterback. 78 yards and a touchdown, though. Came out of the bye looking a lot more engaged than he's played. And he did have some drops issues again. But if the quarterback play can be there, I'm mildly optimistic.
So I didn't feel like I could my heart wasn't in putting him in the lineups, even though you're like, it was going to happen. It's probably going to happen in this game out of the bye against a Jets team that's like, we just gave away all of our defenders. Then they ran 70 plays in this game. Because of those 2 special teams touchdowns for the Jets, it's 70-47 in total plays. Of those plays, they did spend 12 of them on Jerry Jeudy, and he did have a nice touchdown reception where he came back to the ball. I do think that all the focus on how nice a play it was is within the context of him having the worst season in anyone's memory in terms of catching the ball. And he had like 3 more balls just go off of his hands in this game. You had 6 for 78 and a touchdown, but of the 6 balls that were not caught, like 3 of them are legit drops. That's a rate. It's a percentage that, like, they're going to go back to the drawing board and be like, we have to cut him. I mean, they're obviously not going to cut him. Cedric Tillman only catches 2 passes for 11 yards in this game, makes an extraordinary catch. I think that play must have been wiped out.
No, it was he drew a DPI. He didn't catch it. They showed the replay. He didn't actually bring it in. The one-handed.
I didn't go back and verify that because either way it was going to be.
It looked like he caught it on the live, and then they showed the other angle, and it was like not even close. He just kind of pulled it out off the ground to himself. But it was a penalty, so they got the yardage. Yeah.
Cedric Tillman, I mean, David Njoku, 2 for 21. He scores the touchdown. It's just going to be Famine City the rest of the season, anytime that he's remotely healthy. And he was remotely healthy in this one and got 7 targets. I mean, Harold Fannin is going to destroy the rest of the Browns in targets the rest of the way.
There was like a 3-year stretch where I disliked Jeudy, and you were all about Jerry Jeudy and convinced me on Jerry Jeudy. And now I'm trying to like be the Jeudy optimist, and you're like, he's so bad they have to cut him. You're killing me.
It was rough. It was rough. I was hoping that it was going to be such a good game that a week from now we're thinking, okay, well, lost the points and some start sets last week, but he's back. They figured it out. Dylan Gabriel actually played not great, but fine. He ran some, which was helpful. I mean, again, his guy, if Jerry Jeudy doesn't drop all those passes, they win the game, and Dylan Gabriel's numbers look better. That's probably an exaggeration too. But again, Ben, he dropped a bunch more passes today. He dropped a bunch more passes.
Not a bunch more. I figured it out. You're so in the tank for Dylan Gabriel that now you hate Jerry Jeudy because Dylan Gabriel's numbers don't look good enough.
I feel like I got double thrown under the bus on that one. On a more positive note, there was a Cardinals-Seahawks game where Trey McBride and JSN continue to establish themselves as maybe 2 of the top 5 players in football.
They are incredible. I did double throw you under the bus there. That was not fair, but I'm trying to understand why you hate Jeudy so much, and the fact that you love Dylan Gabriel is a little bit interesting. Sam Darnold, 10 for 12, 178 yards, looked awesome except for when he did it. Started turning the ball over a bunch, and the Seahawks were like, "We're just never going to let you pass again." I think he had 10 passing yards in the entire second half of this game. But the Seahawks were already absolutely destroying it. I mean, people are like, that's why they didn't throw in the second half. It was 35-0. Are the Seahawks the best team in football? I mean, they have 2 fumble return touchdowns basically in the first quarter. The second one was in the first minute of the second quarter. That put them up 28-0 in the first minute of the second quarter. They seem unstoppable. Like, it's not even like the Cardinals did anything wrong. This is the best coach team in the league, and it's not close. They do everything right defensively. They do everything right offensively. Schematically, they're getting into they're doing the 2 tight end stuff and throwing against base. They're getting teams into base. They're tricking defenses into doing the things they want so that they can get the right look, so that they can take advantage. And then they have the talent of a JSN that they can just hit for a long touchdown early into double coverage, because he's absolutely blossoming within a scheme that's designed to take advantage of him. On the flip side, when teams go to 2 tight end, there's nobody that is going into nickel at a higher rate, because Mike McDonald is a step ahead. He's understanding that side of it as well. Teams are not able to get them into situations where they get all this advantageous stuff. Trey McBride looked incredible, but part of the thing with Trey McBride was the Seahawks are very early in this game up 35-0 and are spending most of the game really dropping into zone coverages and not allowing the big plays, and that's going to give a lot of room underneath for Trey McBride. But in all likelihood, they could have taken a little bit of that away too. Is basically from Seattle's perspective, they're like, yeah, we were giving space underneath for a reason.
Well, I guess I would push back a tiny bit on the McBride thing, where he was dealing with a lot of coverage, and on his 13 targets, he catches 9 out of 13. 2 of the 4 that were not caught were end zone targets where he makes a nice play on the ball and the defensive back makes a spectacular play on the ball. He also has a second touchdown, which occurred earlier than the first touchdown in time of the game, that gets called back. And it's just an utterly dominant performance from him. And it's just repeatedly catching balls way down the field as
That's
well.
Right. That's right. I misrepresented that. But what is your sorry, unless you want to keep talking about McBride, but I wanted to know your perception on the Seahawks.
Yeah, so the 2 things that I kind of wanted to finish the show with were, who's the Super Bowl favorite and who is the MVP. And certainly,
oh my God, you're going to say Sam Darnold.
Certainly, my thought was,
oh my God, just
that the Seattle Seahawks are the one legitimate Super Bowl contender currently in the NFL. I don't think we have one really in the AFC, like a Super Bowl caliber team. I think we'll get one because we know that you have the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs, and those teams are not even in great position, right? We have the Patriots get bailed out today by TreVeyon Henderson, have played a really soft schedule. The Patriots might end up being one, but they still have a ton to prove. The Chargers would have been, if not for getting just eviscerated by injuries. Maybe they'll be able to get back to that. The Denver Broncos, you could make the case for based on record, but you can't beat the Raiders 10-7 in any world, in any situation, even if it was on like 0 days rest, and be a Super Bowl caliber team right now. So that leaves us, I think, without in the AFC. The Colts are the closest, but the Colts have struggled in the last couple weeks in ways that a true Super Bowl caliber team would not have struggled. You go to the NFC side, the Lions have flashed, but also had some really bad losses. The Eagles have won, but have not looked good. I mean, it comes back around to being the Seahawks, and they are the dominant team. So the question would be, right, so they go 28-0 before the game has basically even started. Do they stay a Super Bowl caliber team when really neither Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker are what they were hoping for? I mean, the numbers look decent in this game for Charbonnet, but I mean, you watch him and you're like, there's really nothing there. Kenneth Walker somehow is maybe the third best guy here. They have a play where you have a running back make a really nice play, and you're thinking, well, that was a nice play, but you know what? It didn't really look like Zach Charbonnet, and it didn't really look like Kenneth Walker. And the reason it didn't look like them is because it wasn't them. It was George Holani.
The announcer's like, and Zach Charbonnet scores, and then he got so confused. He was like, oh, no, that was George Holani for his 6th touchdown of the year. Or no, his first touchdown of the year. Because like, this guy does not have 6 touchdowns this year by any means. No, yeah, George Holani might be the best running back in the league. The most confusing thing here is that Seattle's this good, and Kenneth Walker is not actually doing anything like that. If you told me Seattle would be this good at the beginning of the year, I would think that the Kenneth Walker bags would be absolutely hitting. I'm crashing out about the MVP thing. Before we finish this MVP center thing, is MVP. It Jaxon Smith-Njigba? Are you going to tell me it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, please? Please tell me it's Jaxon
MVP. This is a game that the Seahawks are up 28-0 before the game has basically started. They score 44 points. He attempts 12 passes, and yet still somehow manages to throw a pick and lose 2 fumbles. The number 1 spot, right ahead of Drake Maye in 2nd and Jonathan Taylor in 3rd, is very clearly Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who has been the best player in the NFL this season.
Because at first I thought you were gonna tell me Sam Darnold, and then I realized you might actually tell me the MVP should be a wide receiver, and I like it. That because I otherwise, as my kids say, was crashing out a little bit. Sam Darnold's playing really good football. I can't do the MVP for Sam Darnold thing. I love the idea that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the league's MVP. I think that's an inspired choice because it really just balances exactly what I was just saying, that you can't give it to Sam Darnold. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is incredible and is playing incredible. They only throw 12 passes in this game. He gets 6 targets, 5 catches, 93 yards, and a TD. He still has an incredible line despite 12 team pass attempts.
This all happens early, and for everybody who didn't get to watch, it happens early for the 2 reasons. The one that's obvious, which is they go up 28-0 early. The other one is he takes a massive cheap shot. And you were talking about how in the Jackson Dart situation that they didn't get him immediately out. After the cheap shot, Smith-Njigba is out for a play, tries to come back in on a subsequent play, is pulled out by the medical staff. He does pass the concussion test. He does play a handful of further snaps in the game. He does catch 1 ball late after the Cardinals are like vaguely have pulled back in the game. But all but 1 catch of this happens in the first quarter where Jaxon Smith-Njigba is ripping the Cardinals to shreds. And within that first quarter, he gets to the 75 yards. And Ben, the telecast showed that he was the 3rd receiver like in the last 30 or 40 years to go for 75 yards in his first 9 games of the season, joining Antonio Brown and Michael Irvin. I mean, think about the length of time we're talking about that Michael Irvin would have been one of the 3 guys.
I mean, And it's what's so incredible is like even the 75 yards thing doesn't necessarily do it justice because I'm sure there's other ways you can cut this. He had 79 yards the last time they played Arizona, and he had 96 or something in this game. He's been over 95 in every other game, 93 in this game. But I mean, he has coming into today, he has 600-yard games in 8 games, and then a 79 and a 96. And of those 6, 5 of them are over 120. I mean, 520-yard games in the first 8 of your season. That's got to be.
This is for a team that's. I mean, there's no argument for Sam Darnold because everything that Sam Darnold has done has been just directly Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and if that's the combination, the receiver has to be the guy who's getting the credit.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I thought you were gonna make me think I was crazy, and instead you made me think I was crazy for not thinking the way that you were thinking, because that is the logical answer. I like that. As far as a team that no, I do like. I've come around on this, so I completely missing the Seahawks. Told everyone in my life that I didn't like what they did in the offseason because everyone, up here in Seattle likes the Seahawks and likes to, ask me my thoughts on them. And I didn't like that they seem to be acquiring players to fit scheme. I talked about this a lot in the offseason. Those players aren't really making a huge impact. Darnold is. Cooper Kupp has not done a ton. He has a 67-yard catch today. Marcus Valdes-Scantling was another one that they brought in because
there were no defenders on the side of the field that Cooper Kupp was on when he had that 67-yard catch.
And he's just like running down the sideline like the oldest man in the league. Marcus Valdes-Scantling was another guy they brought in because he had been in Clint Kubiak's scheme last year, and you're like, well, this guy's not actually any good, but he knows the scheme. Well, they cut him and moved on pretty quickly. Then they go trade for one who's actually probably good and is going to bring more to their team. Rashid Shaheed. One of the fun things they did in this game is they lined up Shaheed straight up at halfback and gave him a run play, which was, he barely knows the offense, so why not get the ball in his hands a different way? He's a great return man. Thought that was pretty awesome to see the way they used him in that way. But yeah, this whole point about them, the way that they were acquiring talent fit scheme, whatever, yada, yada. I just think that the answer here and the lesson here and the reason that they are a true favorite all comes back to Mike Macdonald. And one of the things when we did talk about them in the offseason and I got around to was like, if they're going to be good, I thought they were going to be good through their defense because they're going to be good because Macdonald was going to be that good of a coach. I think he's got to win coach of the year. Of all the different awards, MVP, whatever, Clint Kubiak was not this good of a coach with New Orleans. Now different personnel. I think a lot of people are saying Clint Kubiak's doing a great job here, and I assume that he is. I'm sure that he is. Mike Macdonald, after the first year, fired Ryan Grubb, and Ryan Grubb's offense wasn't bad. For a first-year coordinator, it was middle of the pack. A lot of the times, that gets you a second year. Macdonald was like, I can't work with this guy. He's not doing the things that I need him to do behind the scenes clearly. So he goes and fires him. And I talked about that as being a little bit risky this offseason because you bring in a new coordinator, and if this doesn't work, you probably can't fire him after 1 year, and you're getting into the position where you may, as a head coach, need to be let go after like a third year. If it's not working well, you can't just fire your assistants every year and not have that fall back on you as a negative. He takes a little bit of a risk there, but he knows what he needs to do offensively, what he's looking for schematically. He brings in Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak's whole scheme is working incredibly well. It's working well because of a lot of different schematic things, what they're able to force defenses to do. And Seattle's defense is not doing on the other side when teams are doing it. Some of that like match stuff with the 2 tight ends that I was talking about. It makes me believe that Mike Macdonald, and maybe to some degree Clint Kubiak as well, but is so aware of, we're talking about how the sport is constantly evolving and there are these schematic evolutions, and you have like the Sean McVay offense ends up taking the league by storm when he becomes a head coach, and then eventually teams are doing different iterations of this, and his coaching tree is all around the league, and they're doing different 11 personnel and this and that and then different variations, and it all goes different ways. You have the defensive side of that, you have the Vic Fangio defense and how that has evolved, and all these different quirks, right? It's a copycat league, all these things, but there are coaches at different points, especially these young coaches that take over the head coaching jobs, that understand where the sport is at, where it's at in its evolutionary arc, and they have answers that like they're just locked in. They are a step ahead of the entire league at a point in time, and then everyone winds up copying them. Teams are going to copy the Seahawks in the next couple of years. Mike Macdonald is the best coach in the league right now. He understands the sport better than anyone. They're just so incredibly prepared. Like, coaching is about the details and everything. Every player, every play call, offensively, defensively. The Cardinals, I mean, when they're bringing blitzes and stuff, like on key downs offensively, they're just not prepared for early in the game, the strip sacks and stuff. I wasn't even like, oh yeah, Jacoby Brissett's doing stuff wrong. It's just like they had the right play call dialed up every time defensively, and the right players in the right spot. One of the plays you were talking about, the great defensive play, was that Eman Wari guy, the really athletic young player. They had him on McBride one-on-one play. He makes a really nice play there. But I mean, just everything they're doing, how they're using him to try to take out, Trey McBride in the red zone, what I thought was an interesting moment there. But anyway, you're watching this game and you're like, man, this is a team that I can't even describe what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. I doubt the whole entire league does. They're going to be copying them 2-3 years from now or next year or whatever, because it is pretty quick the way the copycat stuff happens. But I just think what we're seeing when you see a team go up 28-0 2 weeks in a row in the first half, like, they're offensively way too dynamic, defensively always in the right call. It just goes back to all the stuff that we heard about Mike Macdonald when he got hired, that he's so cerebral, all of these things. Like, why is this team so good? Their running backs aren't that good. Their offensive line isn't that great. Sam Darnold, I mean, he's playing very effectively. Like, we do need to give him some credit. 178 yards on 12 pass attempts is a great yards per attempt. He was hitting on some big plays. He does throw good passes when protected and in good situations. At the same time, he had an early pass that should have been picked as well that wasn't. And then he throws the pick. Then he has the 2 fumbles. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a differentiating player. But, like, what we're seeing from him is clearly the combination of scheme getting talent into the right spot and talent being so good, because that's how you get to the stats that we were just talking about. The Michael Irvin stat you gave and the 120 yards and all that. Like, it's not just the player. It's multiple things when the player's that good and defenses can't take him away, because they're trying to take away Jaxon Smith-Njigba every week now, and they can't do it. Like, you're just not going to be able to. I mean, I just think the Seahawks that's why they're a contender, is they're going to have answers because they're ahead of everyone. And I do think this game is so tactical and so schematic. And right now the Seahawks are at the top of the class in that. When you know what everyone else is trying to do and trying to accomplish and what they're doing, and you're a step ahead of that with everything you're doing, everyone's trying to figure that out. They're just trying to catch up, and you're iterating off of that, right? You're in such a good position to continue that edge. And so anyway, I think I like have a weird relationship with the Seahawks because I'm not actually a fan and everyone else in my life is a fan, and I want them to do well because I the people that I care about get excited about that. At the same time, especially when I like tell them, oh, I don't think they made good decisions or this or that, I'm like, now I look stupid. Like, the Seahawks are fun. I don't usually say that is what I'm getting at. I kind of have this weird, not antagonistic, relationship with them, but somewhat negative, I guess. I don't know. But this team, I don't even like Sam Darnold. I don't like a lot of the stuff going on here. And I'm just like, it's the most fun team to watch right now because of what there has to be stuff they're doing schematically that I don't even understand. And I'm not going to understand for multiple years. Anyway, that's my little spiel on what I thought we saw at the Seahawks today.
So you're going to go with the Seahawks as the current front runner. We did get some incredible individual plays from the defense today. Had maybe the best pass defense I've ever seen. And I think it was from Nehemiah Pritchett, who had 2 passes defense today. But I believe he was the corner who made the play. And again, it was low leverage. The Seahawks were going to win the game. But it was a 4th down pass to Marvin Harrison in the end zone. Harrison shows what people want to see from him, full extension, catches the ball laid out, almost fully horizontal, about to hit the turf. And Pritchett, who is also fully laid out and horizontal, manages to reach in, knock the ball away in the most spectacular play that I've seen from a defender. Just beautiful defense in so many different ways from the Seahawks, including the 2 plays early on. Ben, I think that you're right with McDonald. I'm going to go ahead and cast my current vote for Shane Steichen. I mentioned that I don't think the Colts are a true Super Bowl caliber team, but what he has done with Daniel Jones, and even in a game like today, where they come in with this passing offense that leads in a lot of categories, you have this resurrection story for Jones. You have the reports that they're going to sign him to a long-term contract. The Giants fans are like, yes, we know how that tends to work out. But you also have Jonathan Taylor, and to not have the ego in the game here when they're struggling with the pass, to be willing to go to Jonathan Taylor, even though people are not going to give you personally credit for that. They're going to give it to Jonathan Taylor. He's had a fantastic season. These 2 coaches, I think, are the guys who deserve to be kind of in that top tier for 2025.
Everything I just said about McDonald, and I can't even disagree that, because Steichen's been just as wonderful. It's really cool to see 2 new young coaches. I think they're both in year 2, right? Really coming into their own in their second seasons, or is Steichen in his third? I can't remember, but
he's like, I've been here longer than you think. The Anthony Richardson experiment.
Yeah, it took a little while. That's a great point. And as you said that about the Taylor game, I was thinking one little note that we haven't really mentioned on the show, but for people who don't watch a lot of the games, just listen to us to get their stuff. One of the things we should emphasize is there was some weather today. The Bears-Giants game had some real windy conditions. We talked about that a little bit, but there was some rain in that Colts game in Germany. A couple other games got pretty rainy today. I guess maybe we did talk about it a little bit. I mentioned it with the Breece Hall stuff. Josh Allen, there was some rain in Miami for a bit, like right before half. It started coming down pretty hard. I think it was cleared up like through halftime. I'm trying to remember what other games had some weather, but just a little note there too with some of this. That's why Justin Fields only completed 6 passes.
He would never do that on his own. Obviously, even with the TreVeyon Henderson stuff, the Patriots coaching staff deserves a lot of credit this season as well. Then, Week 10 has been fun so far. We hope everybody gets what they need on Monday night. We hope with 2 weeks away, if you're an FFPC, that you are where you need to be. If you're 4 weeks away in your home leagues, hope your team is hitting its stride as it gets toward the home stretch. This has been so much fun, as always. Stealing Bananas. I'm Shawn Siegele. With me, as always, has been Gretch. Make sure you're over there with that Stealing Signals newsletter, other things like the input volatility, like the stealing lines. If you don't have that sub, make sure you get it. I'll pay you guys at RotoViz. Coupon code RVR 2025. Ben, we love him. We'll talk to him soon.